A mortar is usually a simple, lightweight, man-portable, muzzle-loaded weapon, consisting of a smooth bore in high-arcing ballistic trajectories. Mortars are typically used as indirect fire weapons for close fire support with a variety of ammunition. Mortars have been used for hundreds of years. The earliest mortars were used in Korea in a 1413 naval battle when Korean gunsmiths developed the wargu. Is generally credited with inventing the wargu. The first use in siege warfare was at the 1453 siege of Constantinople by Mehmed the Conqueror. An Italian account of the 1456 siege of Belgrade by Giovanni da Tagliacozzo states that the Ottoman Turks used 7 mortars that fired stone shots 1 Italian mile high. The time of flight of these was apparently long enough that casualties could be avoided by posting observers to give warning of their trajectories. Early mortars, such as the Pumhart von Steyr, were large and heavy and could not be easily transported. Simply made, these weapons were no more than iron bowls reminiscent of the kitchen and apothecary mortars from whence they drew their name. An early transportable mortar was invented by Baron Menno van Cohorn in 1701. This mortar fired an exploding shell, which had a fuse that was lit by the hot gases when fired. The Cohorn mortar gained quick popularity, necessitating a new form of naval ship, the bomb vessel. Mortars played a significant role in the Venetian conquest of Morea, and in the course of this campaign an ammunition depot in the Parthenon was blown up. An early use of these more mobile mortars as field artillery was by British forces in the suppression of the Jacobite Rising of 1719 at the Battle of Glen Shell. High-angle trajectory mortars held a great advantage over standard field guns in the rough terrain of the West Highlands of Scotland. The mortar had fallen out of general use in Europe by the Napoleonic era, and interest in the weapon was not revived until the beginning of the 20th century. Mortars were heavily used by both sides during the American Civil War. At the Siege of Vicksburg, General Ulysses S. Grant reported making mortars by taking logs of the toughest wood that could be found, boring them out for 6 or 12-pound shells and binding them with strong iron bands. These answered as Cohorns, and shells were successfully thrown from them into the trenches of the enemy. During the Russo-Japanese War, Lieutenant General Leonid Gobyato of the Imperial Russian Army applied the principles of indirect fire from closed firing positions in the field and, with the collaboration of General Roman Kondratenko, he designed the first mortar that fired Navy shells. The German army studied the siege of Port Arthur, where heavy artillery had been unable to destroy defensive structures like barbed wire and bunkers. As a result, they developed a short-barreled rifled muzzle-loading mortar called the Minenwerfer. Heavily used during World War I, they were made in 3 sizes, 7.58 centimeters. It was not until the Stokes mortar was devised by Sir Wilfrid Stokes in 1915 during the First World War that the modern mortar transportable by one person was born. In the conditions of trench warfare, there was a great need for a versatile and easily portable weapon that could be manned by troops under cover in the trenches. Stokes' design was initially rejected in June 1915 because it was unable to use existing stocks of British mortar ammunition, and it took the intervention of David Lloyd George and Lieutenant Colonel J.C. Matheson of the Trench Warfare Supply Department to expedite manufacture of the Stokes mortar. The weapon proved to be extremely useful in the muddy trenches of the Western Front, as a mortar round could be aimed to fall directly into trenches where artillery shells, because of their low angle of flight, could not possibly go. The Stokes mortar was a simple muzzle-loaded weapon, consisting of a smoothbore metal tube fixed to a base plate with a lightweight bipod mount. When a mortar bomb was dropped into the tube, an impact-sensitive primer in the base of the bomb would make contact with a firing pin at the base of the tube, and detonate, firing the bomb towards the target. The Stokes mortar could fire as many as 25 bombs per minute and had a maximum range of 800 yards, firing the original cylindrical and stabilized projectile. A modified version of the mortar, which fired a modern fiend-stabilized streamlined projectile and had a booster charge for longer range, was developed after World War I. This was in effect a new weapon. By World War II, it could fire as many as 30 bombs per minute and had a range of over 2,500 yards with some shell types. The French developed an improved version of the Stokes mortar as the brand MLE-27, further refined as the brand MLE-31. This design was widely copied with and without license. These weapons were the prototypes for all subsequent light mortar developments around the world. Mortar carriers.